Back to tomorrow's presidential debate. Matt Lewis, your latest article for the Daily Beast is entitled, Trump's Debate Prep is Whining and Making Stuff Up. And I'll add to that, just attacking people all around for victimizing him. It's the same thing.
He's such a victim. He's
all
such
over
a
again.
Such a snowflake.
Yeah,
so
look,
what's
I think there's a pattern
like?
here, right? Whether it's an election like the 2020 election, whether it's a trial like the New York hush money trial, or whether it's the debate, Donald Trump doesn't wait until he loses to start complaining and arguing that the thing is rigged. He is pre-spinning. And I think part of it is what we were talking about earlier in this segment, which is the expectations game, right? They're after saying that Joe Biden can't string two sentences together, they're finally getting a little worried. They're finally trying to change that expectations game and say, well, he'll be hopped up on caffeine. But look, I think part of it is simply Donald Trump's MO. He complains, he claims it's rigged. The only way I could lose this election, he says, is if it's rigged. Same thing with the debate. The only way he could lose the debate is if it's rigged. And I think it has, really, it's a two-pronged approach. There are two components to it. Part of it is he gets to work the refs, in advance. He gets to make them think twice and maybe go a little easy on him. And then the second is, if Donald Trump, in fact, loses the debate, then he has already laid the groundwork for saying, well, it was rigged. It was always rigged. It was rigged the whole time. Here's the problem. It kind of is rigged. Joe Biden outmaneuvered Donald Trump. The timing of this debate, the rules of this debate, those were all set by Joe Biden because Donald Trump allowed it to happen. Joe Biden's team, I think, really outsmarted and outmaneuvered Donald Trump. And if he goes on to lose, there will be one person to blame, Donald Trump. And I think Republicans, rather than blaming the moderators or Mountain Dew, should blame Donald Trump for that.
So, Sam Stein, we know that tomorrow night is a moment for President Biden to reassure Americans that he's still up for the job, as we've discussed. Right. He did so at the State of the Union. He has another opportunity to do that tomorrow. But it's also a chance for him to really go on the attack. I'm curious to get your analysis here, but what buttons he should push? What lines should he pursue in going after Trump? And it could be January 6th. It could be democracy, certainly abortion rights. How do you anticipate it going?
Well, I guess it really depends. Does he go with Mountain Dew Baja Blast or Mountain Dew Code Red, right? I mean, that's that. I thought that would land. I thought that would land a little better, honestly.
I
think I was too removed from the opening of the show. Look, I think, the honest answer to your question is they want to create a contrast, right? I mean, this is a classic sort of referendum versus contrast conundrum that they have. They don't want this race to be a referendum on his record as much as they think his record is great. They want it to be a contrast on the agendas that each candidate is putting forward. And so in this case, they're going to use the debate to say, look, we've done some work on the economy. We're getting there, but we know we have more to do. And Donald Trump would send us back, frankly, that his policies are inflationary, right? They're going to say our foreign policy, we've made tough decisions. We've stood up the NATO alliance against Russia. Donald Trump would send us back. On women's rights, we have more to do. Donald Trump will send us back. I expect that to be the sort of fundamental theme, is forward, not backwards. And frankly, that's probably the best one to play for Biden because they need the electorate to be focused not on Biden so much, but on Trump. And finally, I'll just say this. Biden's debate partner, I think Dan Pfeiffer wrote about this, but I think it's true. He's debating not just Donald Trump. Obviously, it's Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. He's debating the caricature that they've set of Joe Biden. And so a lot of this and so much of this is just expectation setting. And he has to clear a very low bar, frankly, which is get up there, be attentive, be assertive for 90 minutes and bypass this bizarre characterization that they've created of you as someone who's got to be hopped up on Mountain Dew or whatever other drug that they suggest you have to take, and let, again, the focus be on Trump.
So it's interesting. There's also, we're going to be talking more about the Veep stakes. Donald Trump talking about he's going to pick his vice presidential running mate, maybe soon. These are the kinds of things that he could do during the debate just to deflect and to have something to talk about that he can talk about confidently. And it certainly would not be foreign policy or legislation or politics, but, you know, picking someone like little Marco or something like that could.
Do you think he'd call him that?
I think he'll probably change. That's what he used to call him. And their Marco will be watching the debate, you know, with bated breath, hoping that he's going to be Donald Trump's vice president in terms of the running mate. But that's the kind of thing he'll do to distract, to try and buy time just to get through it.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, though, what I suspect Matt Lewis is, if you're sort of reading the tea leaves this week, it sounds like they're suggesting the vice president pick may come this week. And if so, that's one more way they're hedging against a really bad debate loss. So what you do is, if you get really bad headlines coming out of the debate on Friday morning, you make sure that throughout the weekend, they're not talking about the debate. Instead, they're talking about your vice presidential pick. So again, even the leaking of that as a possibility shows they're scared. I mean, they're really scared Donald Trump is going to blow this thing.
Yeah, I think, you know, bracket it with, if it is, and that actually might just be a contingency plan. If the debate goes well, we hold the announcement. If it goes poorly, we bracket it with the vice presidential announcement quickly following. And I have to say, Donald Trump, he is really good at controlling the message. There's no doubt about that, and changing the subject. And it used to be that something like a debate would be talked about for weeks on end, and it would dominate multiple news cycles. That may not be the case. It may be that he says or does something either important or just crazy. And that's what we're talking about a couple days from now. He is really good at that, bad at a lot of other things, good at driving the agenda and our attention.
All right.
Senior columnist for the Daily Beast, Matt Lewis, thank you so much. It's great to have you on. And
hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.